So, onwards and upwards, ladies and gentlemen, day 2 of Music Matters, and we're kicking things off right now. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a very cool dude up next who's going to be conducting an interview. Very, very captivating indeed. Dear friend, rock and roller at heart. He's very, very awesome. Please make some noise right now for Rob Schwartz, the Tokyo Bureau Chief of Billboard Magazine.
Hey, wow. You got it. You got it all. Thank you so much. I don't know how we're supposed to follow Jasper and all that he's accomplished, but we'll try. It's my distinct pleasure to introduce to you Chris Lin, the founder of KKBOX, which is a streaming service out of Taiwan. He's about to tell you all about it. Chris, please come up to the stage. Welcome. So I'm not sure how much people know about KKBOX, but we're here to tell them about it. So KKBOX, I think, is one of the first subscription services that's been very successful. Maybe you could tell us a little about the history?
Sure. KKBOX is a music streaming service, subscription, available in Japan, Taiwan, Singapore, Malaysia, and Thailand, and Hong Kong. We've been in the business for more than 10 years. So I think we're actually one of the very first company that's doing streaming service and subscription.
Right. So you founded in 2004, and in that time you were just in Taiwan?
Yes.
Right,
Yeah.
okay. And your expansion has been pretty rapid, I would say. Maybe you can tell us about your different businesses, how the businesses are different, maybe in Taiwan and especially Japan. You have a great foothold in Japan. I think people in this room probably know to a certain extent that it's very difficult to establish business in Japan, and you've been successful there, which is a fantastic story.
Right. I think Asia is very different in a way that market is very fragmented. So the way, a lot of people have been asking me, what is your global expansion plan? Are you interested in emulating the success of Spotify, launching in 50 countries, 100 countries? But I personally am not interested in having a report card, having a number of countries that you launched. What I'm more interested in is to select the countries that we think we can make impact. So I think we purposely selected the territories which the cultural, lifestyle differences, language differences act as a natural barrier of entry from Western bigger players. And then in these selected countries, KKBOX does not want to be only a streaming music service, but rather a more 360-degree service to make people listen to more music, make people consume more music. So using Taiwan as an example is our home market. KKBOX today is not just a music streaming service. We are also an electronic mobile ticketing platform for people to actually purchase concert tickets. We do our annual concert, which is broadcasted in 10 countries. The award is every year, over 10,000 people participated in Taipei Arena, live broadcasted. And we're also in the media business, so we're quite different than how Spotify and other players are operating music business.
Right, yeah, you have a lot of different services. If we can just talk a little bit about like market by market. So in Taiwan, first of all, maybe you can tell us about your demographic. Who do you feel, what's your average sort of KKBOX user in Taiwan?
It's just the same thing as average internet users. Our demographics is very similar to general internet users.
Right, okay. And let's talk about Japan, as I just mentioned. You guys have been successful there. Tell us what you're doing in Japan and how you were able to enter the market.
Right. As you might know that Japan is probably, it's right now the number 2 and number 3 biggest music market.
Oh, it's number 2, solidly number 2, yes.
Okay, but digital is still at very, very early stage, infancy,
right?
And I think in terms of streaming, it's starting to grow. And we are probably well, the number 2 service or number 1 service there. Number 1 is NTT Docomo's D-Hits,
right,
which is a radio type of service. And number 2 is a service by KDDI, which is actually by us. It's a service called Utapas, and which these 2 services have over 1 million users, subscribers in Japan.
Wow.
So I think in Japan, people might not know that we're actually pretty focused in Japan. So we're running a dual branded strategy. There's a KKBOX and there's a Utapas, and Utapas now has a lot more users than KKBOX in Japan.
Right,
yeah.
right. So you have dual branding in Japan,
right.
And that brand, of course, is only Utapas is only for Japan. That's just
right.
a brand specifically
right.
set up for Japan. And just to mention, some people may not know. So NTT is the national telephone service in Japan, and KDDI was set up as the national international phone service provider. These are sort of historical notes, but so it makes sense that they would own the 2, biggest servers.
Right, and then I think for people who are not familiar with the Japanese overall industry, I think that telcos, the carriers, have tremendous impact
right.
and influence on in terms of distributing digital content these days.
Right.
Of course,
right.
Their line's been very successful, but still, in terms of music services there, I think telco still has a huge say.
Right,
yeah.
right, absolutely. And you guys were set up in 2004, as you mentioned. I think in 2010, you had significant investment, actually, from the Japanese?
Right. I think from 2004, the early years of KKBOX was quite struggling because we started it as a streaming platform purely on PC. Okay? And at that time, there's no iPhone, Android. So the early years of struggle, but that really got us set up the fundamentals. Okay? The business model, the relationships with music labels, and the mentality and everything that's required to run this business was all set up in an early age. But I think starting from 2009, when iPhone 3, I remember it was iPhone 3GS, mm-hmm. really gave us a lift. So subscribers start to, pick up. And at that time, we were seriously thinking about launching our service to rest of the Asian countries. And right. Japan was naturally a very important market. And then we all know that how regulated or yes. how yeah. difficult it is to get right. into the Japanese market. So at that time, we did sort of a management leverage buyout to actually have KDDI actually acquire the shares that's, other than the founders and management team shares,
right.
was all venture capitalists. So basically we did a management leverage buyout, partnering with KDDI, and KDDI bought out of those shares. So today, I think management team and KDDI were the 2 biggest stakeholders of KKBOX.
Right.
So
right.
that actually set up a strong foundation for us to operate business in Japan.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, I don't think this is going to come as a shock to anybody here, but if you can get in with such a major player in the Japanese market, you're going to be extremely well positioned, as you guys have shown.
Hopefully.
Well, I mean, you're the number 2 service in Japan right now, which is fantastic. Japan has been rather resistant to the subscription model, and some of the biggest names in Japanese music refuse to put their music sometimes on subscription models, and in some cases on digital entirely. There's an agency called Johnny's, which refuses to go digital whatsoever. Mm-hmm. They have some of the biggest acts in Japan. And then there's the huge act, which people here must know, called AKB48. I think they refuse to go subscription model service. But you've had some success with them digitally. Maybe you could tell us about that.
Right. I think there is a different, it's a very obvious preferential treatment of releasing new contents to on-demand type of service or to radio type of service. So with our 2 services operating in Japan, KKBOX is basically on-demand, right? We have not yet able to win the labels over to convince them to actually put the latest J-pop songs on the on-demand service. But with the radio type service, very similar to Pandora, I think the Japanese music labels and management houses, they're more welcome to, well, at least at the present moment, they are more comfortable in radio type of service, not cannibalizing CD sales. So
Right.
I think no one can say for the long run when they will be comfortable to actually release all the latest J-pops to on-demand service, but at least we've got a hit and run strategy. We have a radio service that's actually going out with a good content coverage to actually grab user base. But I think in the longer term, I still think on-demand service is what people really want. And that's probably going to take a little more time.
Right. I mean, it's a huge question mark as to whether a subscription service is ever going to take hold in Japan, and if so, when. I mean, you guys are perfectly positioned to take advantage of that. I mean, I think you've done a fantastic job on getting the bands who are resistant to digital, or certainly resistant to subscription, like AKB48, onto your radio platform. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Just people may or may not know, Japan actually still has a really strong physical market, strongest CD sales in the world, and the industry there is quite resistant to subscription, particularly because they believe it's going to cannibalize their physical sales. So let's move on to some other territories. You expanded into, you said, Malaysia, Thailand, Singapore. What have your been experiences in those territories?
Well, I think it's still at very early stage, and then I just want to say, I mean, Singapore is a little bit different. I mean, maybe we should spend more time talking about Malaysia and Thailand,
Okay.
which there's a larger population, but these two countries, our experience is that it's a prepaid economy. You know, so when we introduced our service there, a challenge is actually to explain what subscription is.
Right.
You know, when you're paying your phone bill and when you're paying your utility bills not by subscription but by usage, it's kind of hard to explain what subscription is.
Right.
So we struggle a little bit, but we're adjusting our business model in these prepaid countries to have a more flexible business model, introducing day rate, week rate, instead of just monthly subscription. So we've got to be more flexible in terms of penetrating into these countries with different lifestyles.
Right,
Yeah.
right. What kind of success have you had penetrating in, let's say, Thailand? Let's start with Thailand.
I think we're doing quite well in Thailand. I think we're currently the leading service. We have a strong partnership with the largest carrier there. It's called AIS.
Right.
And but to be honest, I think having a leadership there does not guarantee anything. Market is changing so fast, and then we see the challenge is because of the prepaid economy. You see subscribers fluctuating from month to month.
It's interesting.
So we've been trying very hard to find out what are other ways of getting people more committed to paying for music.
Right.
You know, and then at the same time, we're introducing new models in Thailand, and then working with partners there, you know, working with music labels to find out, you know, what else we can do.
Right.
And for Malaysia, I think we've seen a lot of engagement when we bring free music in a free trial to users, but conversion rate has been very, very low.
I see.
So Malaysia is definitely a market that we're trying to find out our next steps. So yeah, that's
Right.
Yeah.
Have you been able to offer any of those other services that you are incorporating in Taiwan or some of your other?
No,
not
not yet.
Okay.
Not yet.
Okay. Right. Right. And how about Singapore? What's been your experience in Singapore?
Well, I think we're experimenting different things, and Singapore is it's more of a mix of I think the majority of music consumption here is still Western songs.
Right.
So KKBOX having a strength in Asian pop. By what I said in the beginning, we want to be focusing on countries where the cultural differences and the lifestyle differences are more different than the Western culture. I think Singapore is probably, I I'm not implying that Singapore is not important for us, but we've been putting more emphasis in Malaysia, in Thailand. But so, yeah, Singapore, we're not doing too well here, you know.
Okay. Any other territories that you guys are, you know, immediately interested in?
Not immediately. We want to be focusing on the territories that we're in right now, and then basically integrating music to local people's lifestyles.
Right.
We still see a very, very healthy growth in subscribers, and that's what we really want to be focusing on.
Fantastic. And, you know, a lot of people within the industry have there's been some backlash, let's say, against subscription services, whether it's Spotify in particular or subscription services in general. And I just wonder what your take on that is.
Well, I think we're seeing a lot of comments on the internet media or on real media that who is to blame for the declining of the industry. So you see certain artists not happy with streaming. Right. But my opinion is, I think every year I come here, gives you an illusion that the music industry is booming, but we should take a look at the gaming industry. I think it's a very, very different story. I think if we don't do something dramatically different for the music industry, I think we will be crushed by Candy Crush. And I think there isn't any party within the music industry to be blamed. I think our common enemy is actually the gaming industry. I think in last year, someone covered that.
Exactly.
Here.
Yeah. No, I think that's a fantastic insight. I mean, now with the screens, you know, whether it's a mobile device or computer, we're competing as a music industry. We're competing for the attention of the user with other industries, whether it's and the gaming industry is probably the number one industry.
Right.
I completely agree with that. Yeah.
Right. And something to add on is, I think gaming industry has been historically it was sort of like music industry. They were selling packaged CDs, you know, software games, and then turn on to online games, doing subscription. But right now, the mobile games is basically free to play, and charging by items. Right. You see how the gaming industry has been transforming, you know, and I think it's very important for an industry to actually be more open and to adapt more flexible business models.
Absolutely.
To actually adjust to the climate.
Right. It's an incredibly flexible industry, and it's proven to be hugely successful. Yeah. Wow. Well, on that note, I think that's great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the insight. Everyone, thanks for listening.